Okay, so get this. Canada's got these brand new spouse visa rules for like 2025,
Yeah,
and it's a lot.
it
Yeah.
is.
I mean, on the surface, it sounds about as exciting as, reading the fine print on your tax forms, but
Right.
it's actually a pretty big shift, and
Mhm.
it's going to have some real consequences for, well, anyone hoping to, call Canada home,
Yeah.
even if it's just temporary, right? So we're digging into these excerpts, Canada's new spouse visa rules, 2025 update.
hmm
I mean, spoiler alert, some of this stuff is pretty surprising, to say the least. And it could really change the game for,
Yeah.
like, everyone from international students to skilled workers and, well, their families, of course, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's when you look at it, it really does seem like Canada's trying to switch things up. Like they're getting a lot more specific about the kind of temporary residence they want, Not just about like overall numbers anymore.
Okay, so let's break it down. So one of the biggest changes, and I think this is what everyone's buzzing about, is the whole open work permit situation.
Right. OWP.
OWPs, right?
Yeah. Open work permits, like you said, OWPs. And those are, well, they're super important. They're basically the golden ticket for a lot of spouses, right? To be able to
Yeah.
work while they're here in Canada. And it used to be, a lot easier to get one, but now it's a lot more restricted, especially for spouses of international students.
So before we, like, really dive into the nitty-gritty, can we just, like, back up for a second?
Yeah.
Why are OWPs such a big deal? I mean, on the surface, being able to work seems, well, pretty important. But I guess if I'm thinking about it from, the perspective of someone who might have to put their career on hold.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. I mean, for a lot of couples, right?
Right.
Both partners working, that's essential, It's not just about the money. It's about like building a life together in Canada.
Right.
You don't want one person just sort of sitting around, waiting. It's about integrating
Right.
and having a sense of, purpose for both people.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. Okay. So what's the deal with these OWPs for the spouses of international students?
So now, it's only spouses of students who are in certain programs who qualify, right? Like if you're in a master's program, it has to be at least 16 months long. Or you have to be in a doctoral program or one of those really specialized professional programs, the ones that are like super high demand, like think certain medical fields, things like that.
So basically, if you're going for like a shorter master's degree or forget it, a bachelor's degree,
Right.
your partner's basically out of luck.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Wow. That's it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's not just the students,
Mhm.
or their families. Like it impacts the universities too.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it, right? You're a university and you're trying to recruit these like brilliant international students,
Right.
but their partner might not be able to work. So yeah, it adds this whole other thing they've got to consider.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect.
Yeah.
Like one change just impacts all these other things.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, it sounds like they've shuffled the deck for spouses of temporary foreign workers too.
Yeah.
With TFWs.
TFWs, right.
Exactly, yeah.
Mm.
So now, if a TFW wants to sponsor their spouse for an OWP, well, their work permit has to be valid for at least 16 months.
Okay, so that 16-month thing
Right.
keeps popping up.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, it seems like Canada's really trying to,
Yeah.
focus on people who are going to be here longer term,
Yeah.
It's almost like they're saying, hey, if you're just looking for a quick in and out, maybe Canada's not the best fit. It's about those who are like actually considering putting down roots.
But wouldn't that, maybe make the super skilled professionals, the ones everyone wants, like hesitant to come here, If they're not sure they want to stay for that long. I think that's a really good point. And honestly, that's what a lot of people are wondering,
Yeah.
Is this going to scare away some of that top talent? Because it's competitive out there, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants the best and the brightest. So will this make it harder for Canada, It's a tough one.
Right. And then just to throw a wrench in the whole thing,
Yeah.
the kind of job you have now
Hmm.
impacts whether your spouse can even get an OWP.
Oh, totally.
Something about NOC codes.
Yes, exactly. NOC, that's the National Occupational Classification System. It's how they like categorize jobs here. And now your NOC code basically determines what happens with your spouse's OWP. So they've got these tier categories. If you're in a high-skilled job, like think tier 0 or 1 software engineer, doctor,
Okay.
your spouse is good to go. Automatic OWP.
So basically, if you're in one of those in-demand, high-skilled jobs,
Right.
you get like a fast pass.
Exactly.
But what if you're not?
Yeah. So if you're tier 2 or 3, that's considered lower skill. Think, cooks, retail workers. It's way harder for their spouse to get an OWP.
So it's like literally the same couple.
Right.
But if they have different jobs,
Exactly.
totally different outcome.
Yeah, and that's where I think these rules could have some,
That's sickening.
unintended consequences.
Totally. And could even make things, kind of unfair in some ways.
Right.
Because it's not just about couples, right?
Ooh.
What about families with, kids?
That's another big one. So dependent children, they can't get family OWPs anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal, especially for families thinking about, moving to Canada.
Yeah.
Especially if one parent's work permit is, less than that 16 months.
So if a family comes to Canada
Yeah.
on like a temporary work permit
Mm-hmm.
and they don't, qualify for any of those exemptions,
Yeah.
only one parent can work.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot to process. I mean, it sounds kind of overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
But there is some good news.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you've already got an open work permit, you're all good. It's still valid.
Okay. Phew. That's good to hear.
Right.
Anything else fall into the good news category?
Yeah, for sure. So these new rules, they don't apply if you're already on track for permanent residency.
Oh.
Or, if you're being sponsored by a Canadian citizen
Okay.
or permanent resident.
So basically, if you're already kind of in the system
Right.
or you're connected to a Canadian, like a citizen or permanent resident,
Mhm.
you don't have to worry about these new rules.
Yeah, you're good. You're exempt.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about just like the application process itself? Anything changed there?
Big time. Almost all work permit applications, including OWPs, they're all online now. Unless you're the spouse of a worker who's here under a free trade agreement,
Oh.
or, if you're transitioning to permanent residency. Those are the exceptions.
I mean, it seems like they're trying to streamline things.
Yeah.
Maybe make it a little faster.
Mhm.
But what about like people who aren't, super tech savvy? Or what if they don't have like good internet?
Right.
Could this actually make it harder for them?
I think it's definitely something to consider for sure, because, whenever you make a big change like this,
Right.
you have to think about accessibility, right? Making sure it's fair for everyone. It's something to, keep an eye on as these new rules roll out.
So basically, it sounds like things just got a whole lot more complicated.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's more complex. And honestly, I think it's still too early to know what the long-term impacts are going to be.
Right.
Will they actually reduce the number of temporary foreign workers, which is what they're saying they want to do?
Right.
Or will it just make it harder for families to be together?
Right.
And what about attracting the talent that Canada needs?
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Lots to think about.
For sure.
Well, thanks for, breaking it all down for us.
You're welcome.
And listeners, we want to hear from you. What do you think all of this means for, Canada's future? Jump into the conversation and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive.
Sounds good.